and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Thousands rushed to a US-Israeli-backed Gaza aid center Tuesday as 8,000 food boxes were distributed amid UN boycotts and Hamas denials. Rescuers say 8 killed in an Israeli strike on northern Gaza as Macron waives Palestinian state recognition ahead of a June 17th to 20th UN conference. Zelensky warned Russia has gathered 50,000 troops near Sumy, rejected Belarus as a peace talk venue while naming Turkey, Switzerland, and the Vatican as preferred hosts. Meanwhile, Russia claimed frontline advances and said it downed 296 Ukrainian drones overnight near Moscow. Russian official Dmitry Medvedev dismisses Trump's comments and warns of World War III, which U.S. envoy Keith Kellogg calls reckless. Putin has agreed to work on a ceasefire memorandum, and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has announced new talks soon. French President Macron has reaffirmed his support for a two-state solution in the Israeli-Palestine conflict and said France's policy has no double standards. He has also attended the welcome ceremony in Indonesia, where he is to discuss strategic partnerships including trade and defense cooperation with President Prabowo. The Trump administration has halted new student visa appointments abroad as Secretary Marco Rubio prepares to expand social media vetting, sparking Harvard protests over visa restrictions and funding cuts. Existing appointments will continue under current guidelines. Ukrainian President Zelensky will meet German Chancellor Merz in Berlin on Wednesday to discuss German support and a possible ceasefire, while confirming his attendance at the next G7 summit and a likely appearance at the EU summit as well. Trump says the Golden Dome missile defense system would cost Canada $61 billion. Claims it would be free if Canada becomes a 51st state. The comments were made in a Truth Social post on Tuesday, highlighting Trump's ongoing push for Canadian participation. Former Assistant Capricorn Clerk has testified that Sean Diddy Combs ordered her to get dressed "We're going to kill" rival Kid Cudi, alleging he kidnapped her and waved a gun during the confrontation with Cassie Ventura. In the latest developments, Ukrainian President Zelensky confirmed he will attend the next G7 summit and may appear virtually at the EU summit as well. He revealed Russia has amassed 50,000 troops near Ukraine's Sumy region as a peace talks venue. He suggested Turkey, Switzerland, or the Vatican instead. Malta and several African nations have offered to host peace talks, while Zelensky is seeking $30 billion to boost Ukraine's defense production. Meanwhile, Russia claims advances across almost all Ukrainian front lines and accuses NATO of using the war to expand its presence in Eastern Europe. Russia says Ukraine is ignoring its peace overtures. Overnight, Russia launched 88 drones and 5 ballistic missiles. Ukraine says nearly 300 Ukrainian drones were downed by Russian forces. Tensions remain high on all fronts. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump issued a stark warning to Russian President Vladimir Putin, declaring he's playing with fire as the U.S. considers fresh sanctions over the ongoing war in Ukraine. Trump's sharp remarks come after a deadly Russian drone strike killed at least 13 Ukrainians and amid stalled peace talks. Expressing frustration, Trump claimed Putin has gone absolutely crazy, a significant shift from his past praise of the Russian leader. Reports suggest that Trump may impose new sanctions as early as this week. The White House says Trump is keeping all options open. Russia continues to blame Ukraine for provoking conflict, claiming massive drone attacks by Kyiv. Meanwhile, Ukraine and US lawmakers are urging tougher action. Top Republicans and Democrats are calling for stronger sanctions, including secondary measures on Russian oil buyers. Meanwhile, Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, currently in Moscow, will visit Kyiv this week, a Turkish official confirmed yesterday. The exact date remains undisclosed. Turkey maintains strong ties with both Russia and Ukraine and hosted their first direct peace talks earlier this month. While Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, after meeting Turkey's Hakan Fidan, proposed continuing Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Istanbul, calling it a very good location. Russia says a new peace talks with Ukraine are coming soon. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov confirmed that the next round of direct talks will be announced in the nearest future. He said the last round was held in Istanbul on May 16 and claimed Kyiv had earlier refused to participate under pressure from European leaders. Lavrov stressed that Russia's core demand remains Ukraine's neutrality. He cited Ukraine's 1991 Declaration of Independence, which he claimed promised a neutral, non-aligned, and nuclear-free status. He said that this promise made it possible for Russia to recognize Ukraine's sovereignty. Lavrov also demanded the cancellation of laws he called discriminatory, targeting the Russian language and church. He said these issues will remain a priority in future talks. Let us listen in to what the foreign minister had to say.
15 мая в Стамбуле были возобновлены прямые переговоры по всем вопросам урегулирования, к чему мы были давно готовы, но Украина отказывалась, и ее не пускали в этот процесс хозяева, прежде всего руководство нынешней Европы. На этих переговорах от 16 мая в Стамбуле, когда они возобновились, мы настаивали на отмене всех этих дискриминационных законов и будем продолжать это делать на следующем раунде прямых переговоров, о котором мы объявим в самое ближайшее время.
We have Thomas Porteous, correspondent of NewsX World, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you for joining us, Thomas. President Zelensky is heading to the G7. What concrete commitment is he hoping to secure from Canada and the other leaders?
Suma, obviously G7 is full of staunch Ukrainian allies, apart from the United States now, which currently sits on the fence but is mediating this conflict. As violence spirals on through the Ukrainian east, diplomatic things still keep going on behind the scenes. President Zelensky is currently in Berlin to meet with longtime ally and new Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz. They're hoping to discuss further developments in regards to Europe's role in this peace deal. President Zelensky has also announced his hopes for a trilateral summit. Like this would be a huge development if this were to occur. A trilateral summit between himself, Russian President Putin, and American President Donald Trump. Now, these three figureheads of these nations is crucial for these peace talks to keep moving on. We still continue to see deaths and destruction on the battlefield on a daily basis, drone strikes going either way, and talks and peace deals seem very far away still, even though Donald Trump has continued to reiterate his eagerness to end this conflict since January the 20th, when he was first inaugurated. However, we will see how this develops. Russia has also said that it is developing a new peace deal. We've previously seen Ukraine and the US agree to ceasefire deals in the past. However, Russia has held back in agreeing to them, and one of the main parts of this would be the conceding of land, which Ukraine does not want to do, the absence of European peacekeepers in Ukraine, which Russia also doesn't want to do. So it will be interesting to learn the terms of this peace agreement when it does come through. However, Sergei Lavrov, we've literally just heard him finish speaking just a moments ago, and he has revealed that there will be a second round of direct peace talks in Istanbul. Now, he didn't give a date, but we will see the second round of direct talks between Ukrainian officials and Russian officials in the coming future. The Russian foreign minister has confirmed the previous talks ended in a 1,000-person prisoner swap, the largest of the war so far, and we'll yet to see where these next talks in Istanbul will end up. Will we see any progress in this ongoing, over 3-year-old conflict now?
And now, moving on to what Zelensky has asked, where would the $30 billion Zelensky wants for domestic arms production come from, and how quickly could that boost Ukraine's battlefield capacity?
Well, we don't have the information of where directly that could come from, or if that is indeed an accurate figure, obviously. But there have been many allies of Ukraine giving Ukraine money in order to fund their resistance against the Russian forces. And he is constantly trying to garner more support. President Zelensky is quite often not in his own country because he's trying to rally international support behind the Ukrainian cause. And so we will have to see his allies raise that money. The Biden administration gave the Ukrainians over 150 euros worth in military aid, and so that has come to a halt since Donald Trump took office in January, and there has been trickling through of aid finances since then from European allies majoritarily. However, we will yet to see if that $30 billion figure will keep Ukraine safe and secure for the future.
Thank you, Thomas Porteous, for joining us. Now we move on to our next story. The head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees has called the new Gaza Humanitarian Foundation model, supported by the US and Israel, a waste of resources and a distraction from atrocities. UNRWA Chief Filipe Lazzarini slammed the model as chaotic and unfit, pointing to the scenes in Rafah where thousands rushed to an aid center. Thousands of Palestinians had rushed to US-backed aid distribution center in southern Gaza, desperate to receive food packages after weeks of blockade, which was imposed by Israel. Crowds flocked to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation site in Rafah, overwhelming organizers and prompting temporary withdrawal of staff. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the one distributing aid in Israel, has blamed Hamas for causing delays in civilian access to aid, an allegation Hamas denied. According to the UN, at least 47 people were injured, most by gunfire from Israeli forces. The Israeli military, however, maintained the distribution was a success despite a momentary loss of control. Let's listen in.
I can say is from the information we have, there are about 47 people who've been injured, but I do not have more details beyond that at this stage. And most of those injured are due to gunshots.
Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes continued across Gaza. A massive explosion rocked the north early today, killing at least 16 people, according to local rescue teams, including 9 members of a journalist's family and 6 others in central Gaza. Among the dead and wounded were multiple children. We have Tom Porteous joining us as correspondent from NewsX World. Thank you, Tom, for staying with us. What exactly went wrong at the Rafah aid hub, and who lost control first from what we know of?
Well, I first of all want to talk about the organization behind this aid delivery. Obviously, Gaza, as we know, was facing a 12-week blockade where all aid was completely suspended from going into Gaza. The US, one of Israel's main allies, they proposed a plan where a private organization will go into the Gaza Strip and supply those people with aid. However, this isn't what turned out to be true. It turned out to be a poor operation, poorly organized. There was these mercenary-like US soldiers that were deployed into the south of Gaza, and they gave around 8,000 packages to people. Reports on the ground say that they were nowhere near enough inside said packages. We also got some information about the American troops firing. They have confirmed that they did not fire into the crowd. However, they were just warning shots. However, 47 people have been injured. If you see the images, I'm sure you're running them now, of the chaos that went on, people frantic in trying to get this humanitarian aid that they have been deprived of for so many weeks. Till the start of March, bearing in mind this blockade has come in, and in the past week we've seen a trickle in, but reports on the ground say it is not enough to sustain that Gazan population. More worries is the fact that there are 4 of these points that the GHF, this organization, has set up. Okay, 4 points, 3 of which are in the south of Gaza, 1 is in about the midpoint. This, without a doubt, will cause huge displacement, critics say, forcing people to return to these points if they need humanitarian aid. So that is what the main criticism of this private US firm going into Gaza and supplying them with aid, as opposed to the neutral United Nations aid did previously. But as we can see, it's the future for this aid program, which is US backed, is not looking too hopeful for the future.
You have kind of already touched down upon the criticism involving the aid distribution. So why does UNRWA's chief say the new US-Israel plan wastes resources, and how does that criticism?
Okay, so Asuma, I'm just going to give you an update of what's going on in the area. So we've had 16 people killed in Israeli strikes over the past 24 hours. We've obviously also had this aid distribution, which the world all had their eyes on the Gaza Strip for, and then these chaotic images coming out of the actual event. This was the second drop of aid that the GHF had started. Once again, I've said widespread criticism over this American mercenary approach to giving aid. Warning shots were fired, strikes have continued throughout the Gaza Strip, and they say the situation is now under control. However, we will have to judge by future attempts by the GHF if this system is really going to work and the people who really need it are going to get this aid.
Thank you very much for joining us, and now we move on to our next story. In recent developments in China called for the United States to protect the rights of foreign students after the Trump administration is putting a hold on new student and exchange visitor visa appointments as it prepares to expand social media checks for applicants. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says all U.S. missions abroad have been told to stop scheduling new visa interviews for foreign students while the department reviews its vetting procedures. He further stated that the review will result in new guidance requiring deeper scrutiny of applicants' online activity. The move aligns with Trump's broader immigration agenda, which includes tougher enforcement, deportations, and visa revocations. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce said the U.S. will use every tool to assess who's coming into the country, including the students. Several hundred protesters, including Harvard University students and professors, demonstrated in support of foreign students at the Harvard campus, while also protesting Trump administration's efforts to cut off funding to the university. In another development, the Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee has invited students from Harvard University to continue their studies in Hong Kong. Let us listen in to what he said.
Will welcome any students who have been discriminated by the U.S. policy, who face difficulties to study or continue their studies in the U.S. universities. We welcome them to come to Hong Kong to continue their studies in our universities.
The United States' proposed Golden Dome missile defense system is drawing sharp criticism from Russia. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said Tuesday the $175 billion project undermines global strategic stability. She warned that creating a global missile shield challenges the balance of power by targeting threats from both Russia and China. The massive defense initiative was proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump, who said the system would protect against missile attacks from adversaries. In a Truth Social post Tuesday, Trump claimed that Canada, which he says wants to join the project, would need to contribute $61 billion. Mark Carney had also recently mentioned that Canada is interested in the $175 million investment. We stay in North America. King Charles III and Queen Camilla enter Canadian Senate, honoring fallen soldiers in solemn ceremony marking Parliament's opening session. King Charles delivered the throne speech in Canada, marking the formal opening of Parliament. The speech outlined key priorities, including a renewed partnership with the United States. The King highlighted a new economic and security relationship between Canada and the United States rooted in mutual respect, which he said would benefit both sovereign nations. The address also emphasized Canada's strategy for economic resilience amid global trade tensions. The government, the King said, will unleash a new era of growth that will ensure we don't just survive ongoing trade wars, but emerge from them stronger than ever. Concluding his speech, King Charles echoed the national anthem, declaring the true North is indeed strong and free, a remark that drew applause from lawmakers. Prime Minister Carney described the King's visit as symbolic. Canada's sovereignty appointed reference to recent remarks by Donald Trump suggesting Canada could become the 51st U.S. state. The speech reinforces Canada's independence and direction on global issues. Let's listen in to the UK King Charles III.
Today, Canada faces another critical moment. Democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination, and freedom are values which Canadians hold dear, and ones which the government is determined to protect.
In a rare public disagreement, Elon Musk has criticized U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed One Big Beautiful Bill. The bill is a sweeping tax and spending package that includes extended tax cuts, increased debt ceiling, and changes to federal benefits, aiming to fulfill key promises of the Trump administration. But Musk, who heads the Department of Government Efficiency, expressed disappointment over the bill's massive spending, which he says will increase the budget deficit. He argued it undermines Dodge's efforts to cut wasteful government spending. The bill, which includes tax cuts, is projected to add $3 trillion to federal deficits over the next decade. Elon Musk, who is a close ally of Trump, previously helped save $175 billion, but now plans to focus on his businesses amid growing controversy over the bill. French President Emmanuel Macron is in Jakarta for talks with Indonesia's new President Prabowo Subianto, keeping trade, defense, and mineral cooperation at the top of the agenda. Indonesia is Paris's biggest arms customer in the region. A key focus will be follow-up in the $8 billion Rafale fighter jet deal and submarine agreements signed under Prabowo's tenure as defense minister. 6 Rafales are expected to arrive in 2026. Macron is also pushing to secure more nickel output for French companies, with Eramet seeking mining permits at Veda Bay. The visit comes amid global trade uncertainty as Macron promotes France as a balancing power between the US and China. He'll next travel to Yogyakarta, then Singapore, to wrap up his Southeast Asia tour. An Indian all-party delegation has arrived in Athens, Greece, highlighting India's firm commitment to counter terrorism. Prior to Greece, these groups visited Slovenia and Russia, conducting extensive discussions to update key stakeholders on Operation Sindoor. They will next head to Spain and Romania as part of their ongoing diplomatic outreach. Another all-party parliamentary delegation was warmly received by the Indian ambassador upon arrival in Panama. The delegation was in Panama to convey India's firm message of zero tolerance for terrorism. Panama strongly condemned the recent terrorist attack in Pahalgam, ending its deepest condolences to the victims, the injured, and their families. Panama further expressed solidarity with India in this tragic loss and in the ongoing fight against terrorism. Before arriving in Panama, the delegation visited the United States and Guyana, and they will next travel to Brazil and Colombia as part of their diplomatic mission. Meanwhile, Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim-majority nation, has signaled willingness to recognize Israel, but only if a Palestinian state is granted full independence. Prabowo stressed that Indonesia stands firm on its support for Palestinian statehood, but said diplomatic relations with Israel could follow if Tel Aviv takes steps towards a two-state solution. Let's listen in to the Indonesian president's comments.
Indonesia sudah menyampaikan begitu negara Palestina diakui oleh Israel, Indonesia siap untuk mengakui Israel dan kita siap untuk membuka hubungan diplomatik dengan Israel.
French President Emmanuel Macron called for two states and mutual recognition between Israel and the Palestinians as he held the talks with the Indonesian president. Let's listen in.
Et je veux le dire ici, la France ne connaît pas le double standard. C'est pourquoi nous avons condamné les attaques terroristes conduites par le Hamas le 7 octobre 2023, reconnu le droit d'Israël à se défendre, mais nous avons aussi, dès le mois d'octobre 2023, demandé un cessez-le-feu, organisé dès novembre 2023 la première conférence humanitaire pour Gaza, et sans relâche œuvré pour que la paix puisse revenir, l'aide humanitaire s'installer. Et c'est pourquoi nous sommes aussi mobilisés pour retrouver un processus qui pourra nous conduire à deux États, à une reconnaissance mutuelle et à une paix durable.
Sean Combs' former assistant Capricorn Clark took the stand in the rapper's high-profile sex trafficking trial. Clark testified that Combs viciously assaulted his longtime partner, Cassie Ventura, following her relationship with rapper Kid Cudi. She further claimed that Combs threatened to kill her, Ventura and Cudi, stating, "We are going to kill Cudi," during a confrontation at his home in 2011. Clark testified that she was forced at gunpoint to accompany Combs to Cudi's residence, and in fear for her safety, she called Cassie to warn her. She also recalled being subjected to multiple lie detector tests and what she describes as harsh, degrading treatments while employed by Combs. Meanwhile, Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. The trial continues with additional witnesses expected to testify in the coming days. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.